big emotions, hyperfocus black holes, and years of caffeine just to function. If that sounds familiar, today's story will give you language, tools, and real relief that you've been looking for. You'll hear how a late ADHD and autism diagnosis helped Jennifer turn writing into regulation, use music to unlock creativity, and reframe too much as a superpower. Hi, everybody. Welcome to the ADHD Eavesdrop, where you can be a butterfly on the wall and listen in on my conversations. Today, I have Jennifer Shaw from Airdrie, Alberta. Jennifer lives there with her husband, her 2 young children. Her family has embarked upon a journey of understanding, acceptance, and lifelong learning when they discovered they shared a diagnosis of autism and ADHD. Writing is her passion, and with experience and interests in healthcare, psychology, martial arts, and personal training, I'm so excited to have you here, Jennifer. Welcome.
Thank you so much for having me here.
So I always like to start with my guest's diagnosis story. And so I'm wondering if you can just tell us a little bit about your diagnosis and how it changed your life and how your life changed with it.
Yeah, so I was diagnosed late in life. I wasn't until 2019, and it was after both my sons were diagnosed with autism and ADHD. And I started to see we were going through the ADOS assessment with them, and I started to see like those are red flags, those behaviors that you're looking at, because I've done those my whole life. I didn't realize those were red flags. So then I was diagnosed alongside my boys. In fact, my oldest son was diagnosed, then me, and then my youngest son. And looking back, it made a lot of sense now looking back throughout my life, because I kind of always felt like I was an alien dropped off on this planet. My parents were going to come and pick me up one day and say, "Oh, sorry, there's a big mistake." And one of the things that I had a lot of problems. Like I was very introverted, very shy, didn't know how to talk to people, and I started writing when I was really young. And it became kind of like I needed that outlet. My mom bought me a typewriter because I'm that old. So I started on a typewriter to kind of understand the world around me through my characters. And then it became a hobby and a passion, obsession at times. Now it's just cheaper than therapy, but I didn't share anything until I was diagnosed with autism and ADHD. And I started to think, what if this is my special interest? And I got brave and I'd finished my first manuscript for my series and I sent it off to an editor thinking, okay, well, worst they can say is it sucks. And if it sucks, then I know and I'll just write for myself. But they came back and they said, this doesn't suck. You should publish. So then it started 2 years later. I did. And it started my publishing journey.
Wow. So this has all been like a great adventure for you, it sounds like.
Yes.
What kept you from sharing any of your stuff before you had your diagnosis?
Uh, just lack of confidence, I think. A lot of it was maybe people were going to judge me by my writing, like, psychoanalyze who I was and what was going on inside my head. Because sometimes I get in the zone and it'll take me to a place where I'm like, wow, that's an amazing scene. I didn't know that was on my head. And other times it'll take me to some place and I'd be like, what is wrong with me? So I didn't want to share that with anybody just yet.
Exactly. It's a good thing that you can edit your books as you go. I'm kind of the same way. I'm like when I'm doing a video or something like that, I'll be getting into zone and I'll be just talking away and all of a sudden I'm like, how did I get here and why?
Yeah. Well, the train thoughts, where was it going? Switch tracks somewhere around there.
Exactly. So you and I have something in common, and that is our family has ADHD. My son, my daughter, my husband, and I all have ADHD, but we don't have the autism with it. Now you all have both?
Yep. Me and both of my sons are autism on the spectrum and ADHD. My husband has never been diagnosed, but I would be surprised if he doesn't have at least a little bit of ADHD because he shows a lot of the signs. But, that's up to him to decide if he wants to get diagnosed.
Or so what were some of the things that were coming up for you that you were like, "Oh my gosh, this is me."
There was a lot of stimming behaviors that I had when I was a kid, and they were calming. I remember, like rocking in my chair or clicking pens, like, you don't give me a clicky pen or I'll drive everybody in the room crazy. I tap my fingers a lot. It was just different stimming behaviors. Plus, I couldn't recognize in conversations. I have a hard time with sarcasm. I have a hard time with jokes. I there were some things I didn't understand. Idioms are very difficult. I still somebody says bending over backwards, and I still envision in my head somebody literally bending over backwards, and I'm like, "Wouldn't that hurt their back?" Then I have to stop and think, "No, no, I memorized this one. I know what this one means." But then when I started to see, when we were doing the ADOS assessment with with my older son, first of all, he didn't know how to talk to people, and it was a lot of what I did when I was a kid. So he wanted to interact with kids at the park, but he wouldn't say anything. He didn't know what to do to start a conversation, so he'd just come and stand right there. Or he'd get between two kids that are talking and stand right there. It's like, they have to see me. I want an interaction to happen. I don't know how to start it. And I'm like, that was exactly what I did. At the first, I didn't think anything of it. My little guy is more of an OCD kind of, everything has to be a certain way, which is also a lot like me. If things are not lined up right, it gives me anxiety and I have to correct it. I can't just sit still. Those kind of things.
Sure. Yeah, so you got the OCD, you got the ADHD, you've got the autism. I haven't heard the depression and anxiety in there
That's
yet.
that's just kinda goes along with it. I that was what I was diagnosed with first because that's like the symptom, you get cut on the arm, you're gonna hurt. Okay, that must you're hurting because you have an arm, they're not looking at the arm, why it's hurting, they're just treating a symptom, and that's
Sure,
one of the symptoms that can happen.
absolutely, it's like putting a Band-Aid on an arm being cut
Yeah,
off.
just
So
an artery, you're bleeding out, spurting blood, let's just put a Band-Aid on it, and just,
yeah,
"It'll be fine,
exactly, exactly.
let's soak through, let's put some more on there." Yeah,
So
exactly.
you have become then a writer,
Mhm.
which is like so exciting because how many people in their lives want to be able to say, "Well, I'm a writer." And I'll admit I'm working on my first book right now. Not
Nice.
as easy as most people would think it is. Mine is not fiction though.
Mm.
So you don't have one book. You have a series of
Yes.
books. So you've been very prolific with these stories. When did you start writing
Um, when I started originally writing or just when I started the series?
these stories? Yeah, because I'm curious because it's like you weren't diagnosed that long ago.
Yeah, so
And
I
so
was
you
yeah, so in 2019 was when I was diagnosed, and I had finished
that's not
writing
that
my
long.
first book in this series shortly thereafter, or right around that time. It was September of 2019, and I think I'd either just finished it or was just about to finish it.
So, wow. So in what, 4 years, 5 years time then, you wrote 4 books, is that right?
Yeah, well, I would just write, 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 write. My first book took me about the rough draft took me about 2.5 months, and then it was on a roll, so when it hit I didn't stop between my first one and my second one, and then the second one took me about 2.5 weeks to write the rough draft, and then my third one, it was like 3 months, and then my fourth one and my fifth one, yeah, I've written quite a few of them, but I'm going back and revising them and editing them and releasing them one at a time. I've really
So
been writing hundreds of stories because 'cause I've been writing for 35 years.
and that is awesome, and so you said that that's kind of been your I wouldn't say coping mechanism, but your strategy for helping you. Tell me more about how that helps you, manage your stuff.
Yeah, well, I mean, I started because I didn't know how to I didn't know how to communicate with people, and to coin the better there's no other way to describe it other than what I've heard described is that I felt like everybody had a script and they knew what they were doing and they knew what they were supposed to say to get along and to make friends and to communicate with other people. I didn't have that. I felt like I was missing that script. So I started making my own script and I started observing a lot of people and I had notebooks where I'd be like, okay, so and so said this. Oh, so and so responded with, oh, and there's a smile. So check mark, this is what I say when somebody says that. And I have notebooks of conversations so that's how I taught myself how to speak to people. But then, being very much of a people watcher and trying to figure out society and stuff like that, the next step beyond that was to um interact. And I couldn't because I didn't know quite how to do it. And I always come off as awkward. So I made my characters interact for me and live vicariously through them in awkward situations. Like bullying was a big thing. And so I made my character put my characters in a situation where they were bullied and saw what are different ways that they can deal with that.
That's amazing, and it sounds like when you get hyper focused in there, that's where your hyper focus really works for you.
Yes. Yeah, it takes
So
on a
do
life of its own.
yeah, and so I do wonder because I know that when I I hyper focus on my drawing sometimes, or like a lot of times my editing. I love to edit, and I'll get super focused and forget that all time is passing. Do you do anything to help keep yourself from allowing that much time to pass? Because I can see how that might be a problem. Or do you just roll with it and go for days just writing?
If I didn't set myself, these, checks and balances, I would sit down at 8 a.m. and I would forget to eat, I would forget to sleep, I would forget to go to the bathroom, I would sit at my computer for 2 days straight, I bet. And then I'd end up with like, bad kidney function and it's like I'd stand up, pass out, I don't know, I'd be dehydrated and all that kind of stuff. So I I have a block schedule that I set on my phone, so my little timer goes off. And then also too, I get to a stopping place. I was like, okay, especially when I'm editing, okay, I'm gonna edit to this break here. And then once I'm done, I'm gonna get up and go make the bed. And then I'm gonna come back and I'm gonna do another block of chapters, and then I'm gonna be done. I'm gonna stop there and I'm gonna go clean the bathroom and then come back and do another block. So I try to break it up, and then by golly, I get a lot done.
Yeah, if you can stick with it for sure. So do you have like a timer that is set for you?
Yes, yes. And it only has 3 snoozes. So
Yeah. Yeah. Snooze, snooze.
yeah,
So
yeah.
you would rather be writing than doing anything else though, right?
And then when I'm not writing, I'm thinking about writing. It's just the way my brain works. I'm a very what if person. So I'm constantly thinking, what if this? What if that? And, it takes me, it's creative. And when I'm any stuck for ideas or I just need an outlet and I can't write, what I'll do is I will put my headphones on and I will listen to music. I've got a little track that's got toe tapping music, I call it. And then I'll just go out for a walk and I'll be gone and I'll come back and I'm playing a video in my head because I'm seeing it, a video playing in my head. And I'm just kind of, you know, being creative without aware of my surroundings. So I'll come back 2 hours later. My husband will be like, "Where were you?" I said, "I was in my head. I have no idea where I went."
I've been going for a minute.
Yeah.
Um, I do the same thing. I like, especially with music. When I was a teacher for 30 years, while I was teacher administrator, all kinds of other things. I taught special ed, and one of the things that I did for my English classes is we would write to music
Mhm.
on a piece of
Yeah.
music, and I would have them listen for a while, and because the music changed, I'd have them listen to the piece first,
Yep.
and then we would listen again, and we would start to write, and then I would give them time to write after the piece was done again, um, but it was so interesting the things that would come out when they were writing to
Yeah.
different kinds of music.
Yes. Because every beat has a tune, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So, like, I get these beautiful descriptions of countrysides and stuff like this from kids who are usually like, "The dog is brown," right?
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. That darn
But they're
dog.
talking about there's hills and mountains and streams and flowers and, just
Yeah.
all these things, and it's like
And then
it
if you could track where their writing is compared to the rise and fall of the rhythm, you could probably find that there was more description when it's up higher, the crescendos, than when it was in the lower points. So
so
there's
the
some
fact that
scenes that I write in because I write fiction, but there's some scenes where if it needs to be a really sad scene, sometimes I will play in the background. I'll play like sadder music or slower music because it helps me to think in that mindset.
sad scenes, how do you write sad scenes?
Very carefully. Lots of tissue. I usually bawl my eyes out while I'm writing, and I feel like, I had an editor one time who was looking over my stuff, and I was writing a scene, and I was literally like, I was heartbroken while I was writing this scene because I'm heartbroken for these characters. I know they're not real, but we fall in love with our fictional characters, right? And then my
Absolutely.
editor got the scene, and he says, "Wow, now you made your editor teary-eyed. Good job." And I told him, I said, "Wait till you get to book so and so." I was literally bawling my eyes out while I was writing this chapter.
But you sometimes you just know that you have to do
Yeah.
that to keep the story
Yeah, exactly.
authentic, right?
That's
You I've not read your books, but I am interested in reading them. So, how did you settle into your genre and your writing style?
well, my style of writing has always really it's been very consistent. It's like the way we speak. It's us. But for me, I wasn't a big fan of English in school growing up. My mom was the English major, and She didn't edit my essays at the time. I never would have passed college English. But, I was a big science and math geek, and I don't know if you know, like, math, the way the brain works, it's the same part of the brain working in math as it is creative stuff like music. And I've always been very creative. I write, I draw, I play music on the piano, I sing, just I've always been very creative and stuff like that. So, and then math I excelled at. So I didn't really have a problem as far as being creative with storytelling, but the mechanics of it, I had to learn a lot of that.
So, and what would you consider the genre that you write?
So my books are magical fantasy, action adventure, some supernatural suspense kind of sprinkled in for good measure just cuz, I get bored easily. But I mean, I've written in all sorts of genres. But the only things I don't write history cuz I get bored easily, very easily and I fall asleep. I don't write mystery cuz I can never figure out who done it. Or I can figure it out and it's too easy and then I'm like, "Well, this is too obvious," even though it might not be obvious for somebody else, but it's obvious for me. And I don't write spicy romance. I have romance elements, but I don't do bedroom scenes. So those are like
Gotcha.
everything else is fair game because it's like adventure-y, and if it keeps me awake and keeps me entertained, then it's all good.
That's awesome. And ADHD and creativity, they go hand in hand, as we know. We embrace those very creative, artistic things. And it's very common. I don't know if you find, like, in your circle of writers that a lot of you have maybe neuro spiciness floating around in
There's a
there.
lot of us out there. I think there's just a lot of people that are undiagnosed right now that don't even realize they have it because and it's not that all of a sudden there's a whole bunch more people out there. It's just that it hasn't really been recognized. Like unless, when I was a kid, then no there was so many fewer people that were diagnosed with autism or ADHD that hardly anybody ever heard of autism at that point. ADHD was kind of, yeah, maybe sometimes if it was severe, and they had to be medicated in order to function, but most of the time it was like, "Oh, they're hyper. They need more discipline," or, "They're very busy." That's what I got with my boys is, "I've got 2 very busy boys." Yeah.
Yes. And they are busy.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they have ADHD.
Yeah, they never stop moving.
Right. I'm busy too. I have a really hard time sitting still. And what you say is like when you talk about how it like really wasn't even a thing. I remember sitting in a college class, and I don't know why I remember it so clearly, but I do. I was I was a teacher for 30 years of special ed. So when I was taking my college classes, they brought up this thing called ADHD that I'd not heard of. And this was probably back in 90, and I'd not heard much about it. And it was a disorder for young boys who couldn't
Yeah.
sit still.
Yeah, there were not very many girls that were
No, I mean, girls rarely
yeah.
were even close to considered. So what brought you to seeking a diagnosis? I mean, once you started to suspect that you might have it, some people are just like, well, we're just not going to talk about that.
Yeah.
What was your hope by seeking the diagnosis?
Understanding, because 'cause I've felt like a misfit, not just in my family, not just in, life in general, but, like, on this planet. I feel like I didn't belong in any situation, and even going and talking to people after the fact, I'm like, "I can't read between the lines, but I'm trying, and I feel like life should not be this hard. What is wrong? What is it that I'm missing?" And then when I saw, like, with my son, he was in preschool, so they didn't tell me autism. They told me there were red flags and they were talking about social communication issues. But right from the beginning, I didn't like and I didn't have anything to compare it to, but I was trying to explain to my mom that my oldest when he was a baby, he cried all the time. And she's like, "Oh yeah, they cry a lot." And I said, "No, you don't understand. He will scream his head off for an hour and a half, pass out for 30 minutes, wake up, scream his head off for another hour and a half, pass out, and this was a repeating cycle for the first 3 months of his life. I didn't sleep long enough to have a dream, and
My
I was trying to
gosh.
explain it to her, and she's like, "Well, then you're spoiling him, or he's got colic," was the big thing, everything was that was the umbrella term, colic, and I think now they call it, like, purple crying. If you look up purple crying, it's like crying for no reason for extended periods of time. Well, what about 3 months, because literally he cried himself to sleep, and, it's very difficult to get a picture of him not crying in the first 3 months.
Wow.
Um, and I was like that too when I was a baby, so my mom's like, "Oh, you cried a lot too." And I remember, like before that, people were telling me, "Yeah, your kids," like, and my younger one was just as busy. He didn't cry as much. My older one is a crier, my younger one is a screamer. I don't know which is better or worse. I think with a cry,
You have a positive twist on things when you went to bed.
yeah, you got with the crier, you can kinda feel sorry for them, like, "Oh, you're just crying." And then the screamer is screaming at you, you're like, "I don't think you're sad." You know? So, um but I know, people kept telling me that my kids were very busy, and it wasn't until I babysat a little girl who was about 19 months old, I thought she was broken because she just sat there playing. She wasn't trying to dive bomb somebody off the couch or hit somebody over the head with a baseball bat or something. I was like, "There's something wrong with that girl. Kids don't just sit and play." You know, and I have 4 brothers growing up, and they never sat still either, and, I think most of them are on the spectrum as well. But, you know, and then with Avery or with Morgan, shortly thereafter was in preschool, and they were saying red flags, and I was like, "Okay, maybe there's something to this." Once he was diagnosed and they were looking at those things, I was like, "You know, that's me. What if I have that too? What if that's me as well?" And then it was eye-opening. It was eye-opening to discover that, okay, it's just that it's the difference in my brain. It's not that I'm wrong or there's anything terribly wrong with me. It's just my brain doesn't learn the things that come naturally to other people. You know, my brain just works differently and stuff. And I gave myself permission to ask for clarification.
That's huge. That is huge. I remember because I was 50, so I was older when I got diagnosed too. And I had worked with kids with special ed or with ADHD and special ed my whole life. Like my whole career was focused on that as part of the disorders that I worked with. And I never really recognized it in myself. And then I got diagnosed, but I do remember having a lot of the same things that you're talking about. Why is it so easy for everybody else? Why is it so
Yeah.
hard for me? And the validation of just knowing that it's not because I'm less than, and it's about how my brain works. And being able to say that is just huge.
Yeah. Well, and I've tried not to look at it as a disability either. I know it's classified as such, especially with the autism and combined with it and stuff. But I've tried to tell my kids it's like a superpower. You know, you don't miss anything. In fact, you can't filter anything out and become very overwhelming. It's like you have a computer with every single tab you can possibly imagine open. You got music playing here, you got a video playing here. You're trying to find that one file, and then you get overwhelmed if you can't. You know, if you got too many things going on, you get overwhelmed. You get the little swirly wheel of death, and you have to restart your computer. But in that time before that restart, you're doing lots and you can't shut any of it off. And, you know, but I know that also too, when, an emergency comes, or if it's a really intense situation where I have to think a lot, because I used to work in hospital and x-ray and emergency was my favorite place to work because, in a crisis mode, I can think of 10 different possibilities of how to solve this you know? But then the quieter times where you have to shut your brain off to try to go to sleep, those are the hard times. That's when
Yes,
it's yeah.
absolutely. We are at our best in a crisis
Oh, yeah.
oftentimes. I mean, depends on who you are, but a lot of people with ADHD are their best in a crisis. And that is why I decided to go into administration in the first place, is because I realized, when things get sticky, I get really high functioning.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah, you move it lightning, it's like that just like that squirrel in that movie Over the Hedge where they gave him that hyper
Caffeine.
the caffeinated drink and stuff, and then everything's moving in slow motion, and he's just trolling along, and they're just seeing him zip, 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 and he's moving slow motion according to him,
Right,
so
and he's feeling like, "This is
yeah, yeah,
awesome. I can
exactly.
see what's going on."
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Caffeine will have that effect on me sometimes too. It's like there's a very fine line of caffeine for me as far as when it is stimulating to when it puts me flat out to sleep.
Yes, and I actually learned from a doctor that caffeine doesn't work the same for people who are on ADHD. And in fact, I didn't realize I had been self-medicating with caffeine, with coffee. I would drink 2 pots of coffee a day right up till bedtime, and I'd had no problem sleeping. And then I started on medication for my ADHD, and I can't have more than 1 cup of coffee or I can't sleep.
Right, yeah, it's amazing because, like, coffee had become a part of my
Yeah.
personality.
Yeah.
It was like I always had a cup of coffee in my hand, and then I started taking meds, and like you, I have 1 or 2 cups of coffee a day now, and I'm
Yeah.
peaches and
Yeah.
cream, right?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. I know I remember after my kids were born when they were little and stuff, and I felt like I crashed in the afternoon. Like it was like 1:30, 2 o'clock, boom, I'm crashing. And that's when I would have my coffee usually to keep
Mhm.
myself going for the rest of the day. And otherwise I need a nap. I'd pass out on the couch otherwise. And with the medication, when I started on the medication, it regulates my energy all throughout the day until the evening. And so I don't have to have that. I think the way the doctor explained it is that you're keeping yourself hyper so that your body produces more adrenaline so that it can turn it into a chemical that your brain needs. But if you take the medication, then that medication produces that chemical that your brain needs, and you don't have to be hyper all the time. So it works the opposite. It's a stimulant, but you don't have to be physically stimulated. You know what I mean?
Right.
I don't know
Yeah.
if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, it does, and I too have been self-medicating a good portion of my life. The problem is, and I don't know about you, but I actually do really enjoy the taste and the
Yeah,
flavor
I do too.
of
Yeah,
coffee.
there's something about it when I wish it tasted the way it smelled, because it smells in the mornings. Um,
Amazing.
yes, I know, right? And then you taste it like, well, it's good, but it doesn't taste quite the same as it smells. And yeah, I like the taste of it. So I'll have like one caffeinated coffee in the mornings and then I'll do decaf for the rest of the day and stuff. It's still tasty.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know people are like, "Why would you drink decaf?" And it's like, "Because
If
I
you like
like
the taste.
coffee. I like the taste of coffee."
Yeah.
My dad used to, he'd leave a cup of coffee on the counter or whatever, and it'd have a few swallows left in it or whatever. My mom says, like, when I started, I was about 5, I would go behind him and I would drink his coffee. And, I mean,
Put
I
that down,
really
it's mine.
I'm like, I'm self-medicating at 5 years old, but I'm like, "This is good. This is really"
Yeah, I know, right?
but I don't know about you. How do you feel about cooking?
I hate cooking.
Yes, I
I
hate
hate it.
cooking.
It takes time. You know what I hate the most is I don't mind mixing up the recipe. I don't mind putting the cookie, like say for example, cookies. I don't mind putting them on the tray. It's when you put them in the oven, then you sit there going, do, 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 do. I'm like, oh, just shoot me. Can I go and do something else? And then if I do something else, though, I will forget that I'm cooking the cookies until they're burnt. I did that with
Yes.
a pan of bacon one time. And then I went and took a phone call while my bacon was cooking, and I was on my phone call in the bedroom, and then I came out, my whole room was full of smoke, and I was like, "Oh crap, my bacon!" And I went and I like turned it off and I left the lid. The bacon was gone.
You just cooked it away.
We just cremated it. It was gone. I was like, I didn't know you could cook bacon to nothing.
Right? You should see so there's somewhere out there, there's a TikTok video of mine that went viral, and it of all things, had nothing to do with me except for it was an accident, and I completely melted an entire container of sugar and the plastic container, the sugar in the top of a crock pot where it, like, literally just turned black
Yeah,
and
like
turned
the
an ooze. It's so gross.
like
But,
lava.
I didn't realize it was on and I bumped it. But then, like, just the other night, I completely burned dinner because got tired of waiting for it and walked away and
Yeah. I mean, I have to set not just a timer on there. I have to set a timer on the microwave, a timer on the stove, a timer on my phone, a timer on my watch, and then I have to go upstairs and set a timer on my Alexa because I will not hear those ones downstairs, or I'll set my phone down somewhere, or I'll see my watch. Okay, snooze, or turn it off. Oh, yeah, I heard it, and then I forget about it. You know?
yeah, you got 4 minutes. I got lots of time,
Yeah.
right?
Exactly, like time, well, or you think in your head, "Oh, 5 minutes. This will take me like 5 minutes to do," but it really takes you half an hour because you don't realize how long it actually takes,
Oh,
you know?
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, Jennifer, believe it or not, we are coming to the end of our time and we have had a great conversation. I would like to ask you one more question because I always like my first time people to have the last word. So, my last question for you is if you could go back and tell your childhood self that you had autism and ADHD, would you and why?
I would definitely, because I went through many, many years of thinking that there was something wrong with me. And I don't think there is something wrong with me. I just don't learn the same as other people. And that's all. And that's how I would explain it, is that my brain doesn't work the same as other people. I have to work harder to learn those things that come naturally to other people. But then there's other things that I learn better than other people. and I just need to learn to balance that. But there's nothing wrong with me.
That's beautiful. There is nothing wrong with you. You are beautiful inside and out, and it was wonderful meeting you, Jennifer. It was a great conversation. Good luck with your books. I am going to check them out. You're right up on my genre area, so
Uh,
I would love to check them out, and I appreciate you taking the time to be here today and share your story.
Thank you for listening. I like to ramble, so
But that's what we do here. We
yeah.
we ramble. It's part of the fun.
Yes, yes, exactly. Well, thank you so much for having me. This has been amazing.
Absolutely. And for our butterflies on the wall who have been listening in on our conversation, I hope that they will like, subscribe, and come back next time. And with that, we'll see you next time.